Brian, screenfiles.com and review. Anyone who's watched this channel knows I'm a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro, and I've literally seen virtually everything he's created. I haven't seen The Shape of Water though, because in my mind, Guillermo del Toro does certain things very well. Atmospheric, nuanced, interesting horror, he does very well. I'm not sure I want to see him venture out of it though. And this is my own issue, not an issue with the quality of the film, which is probably, like most of his movies, very good. I've built up an image of him in my mind, and anything that takes away from that image, I'm not too interested in actually seeing, because it will change my view of him. So I haven't seen The Shape of Water yet. And for a while, I hadn't seen The Strain. I really wanted to see The Strain, though. It came a few years after Guillermo del Toro completed Blade 2, and the director has always had a fascination with them as characters. So I really wanted to see that. But I didn't have FX. I do have Netflix, though. And I was hoping it would come on there. After all, Netflix showed Archer, which was on FX, Sons of Anarchy, FX, and a few others, if I recall. Oh yeah, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, FX. So I was thinking, oh man, I cannot wait till The Strain comes on Netflix. This is going to be so awesome. And it never happened. A few years go by, and Hulu entered the picture. From what I've seen of Hulu, it's not very interesting. Netflix, like it or hate it, is an innovative streaming platform. Hulu, at that time, was simply a place to catch repeats of various shows. And The Strain turned up on Hulu, which irritated me to no end, because I don't want to get these things for one show and quit. That's not really my thing. I tend to be loyaler than that to things, even a television network, which makes no sense at all, but just the way I'm wired. So I don't tend to like that. So I was pretty much accepting the fact that I would not see The Strain till recently. And Hulu had a free month. So I'm like, why not? Now keep in mind something though. What made it so remarkable on one level was binging, in that I wasn't waiting till next week to watch the next episode. I was literally going through half a season in a day sometimes, on weekends particularly, perhaps even more. So to get through 4 seasons in a little more than a week is a lot of television watching. And that contributed to the tone and the flavor of the series. Events flowed into each other. There was no pausing unless I decided to actually pause it. That's such a huge contributor to the viewing experience. I think it would have been good, but it would not have been as good without the ability to just watch episode after episode after episode after episode and to keep doing it. So when I take that into account, the viewing experience is amplified, making it much better than under other circumstances it would probably be. This is, I think, the benefit of binging in general. Now, the show itself is so strongly acted, and that works really well for it. Everyone takes the roles they play seriously, and it progresses in a really interesting fashion. I've said before, typically speaking, there's no such thing as evil. What we have are people operating in very selfish and frankly banal ways. Amplified over time, this is sometimes called evil, and it's not. It's people being people, people being petty, people being selfish, people being greedy. These things are not evil, and in fact, they're very human. But as I said, they're often called evil, which I think is lazy. So there's no true evil in The Strain, which I enjoy because it reflects reality. There are people who are doing things in their own, what they perceive as their own best interest, which aren't in the best interest of people. So when I say people, I mean the human race people. And we see that today all the time. So with The Strain, it begins, the first season revolves around the coming of the master, which is this uber vampire, and how certain individuals are working to bring him to the United States. Now, The Strain accepts some common tropes of the vampire movie. For instance, the vampires do not like sunlight. Vampires do not cross running water. Vampires can be destroyed by beheading. But it underpins its vampires with logic and science. If you recall past vampire movies, there was no real reason, or the reason was perhaps religion-based, for the vampire able to do or not do certain things. In The Strain, all of it comes from a point of logic. And again, that's interesting. That I like. So the first 3 series of The Strain revolves around a group of people fighting this menace. And guess what? They essentially lose. Season 4 revolves around the last stand of these individuals against said menace. And by the way, notice I haven't revealed any significant plot points. That's not going to happen. Remember what I said earlier. I've just seen The Strain. The Strain is probably, I want to say 4 to 5 years old by now. So if you haven't seen it before, it's new to you. And to watch me give away important plot points would really suck for you. So I'm not doing that. Overview, analysis of what I see, that's what I provide. I am not going to give away minutia. I'm not going to give away plot details, because beyond broad ones, in which you can literally see from watching any trailer for The Strain, because that sucks. I give you the credit, the viewer, of being able to think on your own, to make your own decisions. If it were to suck, I would tell you that. If it were not worth your time, I would tell you that. But that's all I would tell you. Make up your own mind. And The Strain is great television. There are a few weak points, to be sure. It's not perfect by any stretch, but the weak points are minor. And the narrative propels things along at a very breakneck pace so that you don't really care. If you notice them at all, you don't really care because things are moving along. It has a momentum, and that's also really important. It just flows. And this goes back to my prior point. Binge this series if you can. As far as I'm concerned, binging makes everything better. If you can't binge it, watch at least as many episodes at any given time as you can. Don't do it an episode at a time, because it loses force. It's like, in a wave building momentum. If you break that momentum, it weakens. But if you let it build and build, it gets stronger and stronger. And that applies to not only The Strain, but any series that is bingeable. Binge it. So, taking into account the way the story propels itself, and in fact, some ways, it reminds me of V, which was, I believe it was sometime in the 80s, a television show on NBC that revolved around aliens coming to Earth who actually wanted to enslave us, and they were lizards, which is a really good series, by the way. I believe Kenneth Johnson created it. And if you saw V, it plays thematically very similar to The Strain, though the ending of V was a huge letdown in that it revolved around, well, I should say, they teased earlier that there were aliens coming that the lizard beings were afraid of. They didn't go at that, I suspect because it would probably have been expensive. Instead, they went this red mist type thing, which the aliens reacted violently to. They had an allergic reaction to it. It was a bit of a letdown. And season 4 of The Strain is also, in some ways, a bit of a letdown. It's not on the level of V. It's well done, but you can tell it's a bit rushed. Earlier I mentioned that seasons 1, 2, 3 of The Strain revolve around the coming of the vampires, the building of their power, and the fall of man. Those events happen in the first 3 seasons. Season 4 is the defeat of the vampires. And this is a problematic season because I've read online that Guillermo del Toro actually planned for 5 seasons of The Strain, not 4. For whatever reason, only 4 were actually filmed though. And that's a pity because it's not that season 4 is bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's that season 4 is truncated. It feels rushed. It feels like, and no other season feels this way, it feels like they needed to reach a point and they went balls out to try to get to said point, to put everything together and end this. And that's a pity. It should have ended more spectacularly than it actually did. It ended very clean and neat, and there's nothing wrong with that type of ending. But when your entire show is brutal, efficient, and very fast moving, to tie it up so neatly, literally in a bow, kind of, at least for me, dampened the experience just a little bit. It was riding on so many highs. To end in such a fashion kind of made me go, oh, okay, it's done. It shouldn't be done, but it's done. I enjoyed watching it. It's a great experience, but a bit of a letdown at the end. Honestly, if Guillermo del Toro had finished a 5th season of The Strain, we would have spent more time in the world where the humans were beginning to rise again and see how that would take us. And that would have been a really interesting place to be. In any case, the 4 seasons of The Strain are really great television on the whole. The 4th season is a bit weak, but it's weak not for reasons of storytelling. It's weak because the narrative becomes rushed, and you can tell, at least I think you can tell, that the filmmakers needed to end it. And that's where The Strain is at its weakest. If this narrative had been allowed to play out more organically, it probably would have been, in total, a better experience. As it stands, it's pretty good. Minor errors and a little weak at the end. If you have not seen The Strain, it's on Hulu. Check it out. Binge it if you can. This is great television. This is Brian with screenfiles.com and Review.